See what I'm saying?
Hello.
See what I'm saying, right? See?
Welcome back to another episode.
That's why I said I let her handle
Malaysian Soul
that
Podcast.
portion. I will start again. What up, though?
What up, though? Because you're from the D, I'm from the E.
There is no such thing as from the E, but
E-Town.
Malaysian Soul Podcast coming back to you every Wednesday, talking about current events, highlighting role models, entrepreneurs, community leaders, people making a difference, as well as shedding additional light on Black and Asian community after the vitriol that both communities have received for the past, 2 years now or something like that, ever since the pandemic started popping off.
Have we been doing this for almost 2 years?
Almost 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
That's what's up.
Wow.
What's up. We need to do like a anniversary type deal going on.
That's 5 months, it'll be
back.
2 years. You're right.
That's what's up.
You've been faithfully doing this every Wednesday.
She looked at me. Wait a minute. She looked at me like, I don't know how I do it with you, but somehow I do this every Wednesday. I don't know how I do this.
No, but it has been some challenging times to try to make this happen every week. But we know how important it is. The both of us, we're busy entrepreneurs and business men and women. And so we do this from our heart. We do this because we know how important it is to highlight Black and Asian leaders and community leaders, change makers, because of what the media portrays us. We're not just a virus. We're not just thugs. We're not just a victim of society. We are, among us, role models, heroes, entrepreneurs, change makers, all the above. And so that's why this is so important to us. And we make it happen every week, regardless how exhausting or tired we are. We make it happen, and we highlight these leaders that we bring to you to share their knowledge and their expertise and what they're doing. And so hopefully you can also be inspired, whatever the dream is, whatever it is that your heart desires to go after, become your own entrepreneur, or just chase the American dream, right? And so we hope that will encourage you to do that.
The successful dream, not necessarily the American dream,
but successful dream.
Yeah, whenever you take time out of your schedule, with kids and your business that you run, or your job, or your spouse, it is time consuming. We do this out of the generosity of our hearts. We don't get paid for it, but we think it's important that these messages are told. The reason why we started this is we had a family member, when we were having one of those heated holiday discussions, a family member said, well, the problem is that the Black community doesn't have enough role models and leaders out there. And we thought I personally thought that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my lifetime. So instead of getting into a heated battle that would do nothing to change that narrative, we thought, let's bring them on. Yeah, let's highlight some role models and community leaders out there.
Black community leaders.
Because it's not just actors and athletes and things of that nature. It's people right in your own community who are making a difference. So those people should be highlighted.
Absolutely.
We talk about current events. I just wanted to, I don't know whether or not even they can see that because of the glare.
Oh my goodness.
This is a University of University of Pennsylvania, a professor there, and she was on the Tucker Carlson show last night. Now, Tucker Carlson alone, that name brings a certain vitriol from the way that he speaks and what his views are. But anyway, just to, some people say, well, having a Malaysian Soul podcast is creating a divide amongst people and cultures, which I think is silly. But when people ask us, why do we do this? This is a perfect example of this, is that this professor that teaches law at the University of Pennsylvania went on national TV last night and said that the U.S. would be better off with fewer Asians, and that Black and Asians are resentful to Western success, white folks' domination or success. And that's one of the big problems we have, is that
she's teaching her class test,
and she's teaching, and the National Black Law Students Association and the National Asian Pacific American Law Student Association has penned a letter to have her disbarred, have her removed from the school because she's teaching this. Now, just think, when I was in college, if I would have heard somebody say that, first of all, we would have probably done more than pen a letter. There'd have been some marches, things of that nature. But this is why we do what we do, because there are narratives and messages out there like this. So she's telling young law students that the U.S. will be better off without Asians, and that blacks are resentful because of how successful Western society is. It's totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
First of all, one of the main reasons why Western civilization is as successful as it is because it was on the backs of blacks creating this nation and building this nation up, as well as Asians who had to come over and basically build the railroad structure from the ground up. So that's a little disingenuous to say something like that. But if you ever wonder why we do this and why do you guys feel the need to get this narrative out, it's reasons like this right here. If they're going to come out and say things that are detrimental, then it's our job to combat that with our own narrative. So,
right. Well, and the other eye-opening is, I wouldn't say so much an incident, but I had to speak at 2 different events this past weekend. And I was so in shock at the lack of education that there was surrounding. I posed the question of how many people know the difference between a refugee and an immigrant. The first event, I had only one person raise her hand, and that's because she was a refugee. The second event, nobody raised their hands. And so I was in awe, out of 400 people that I spoke in front of, that only one person knew the difference between a refugee and an immigrant. And I had to explain and educate that we, as a refugee, came by force, And the second question that I had posed was, how many people know about the secret war on Laos? Nobody raised their hand. Like, nobody knew that the US CIA bombed Laos for 9 years, my country where we had to leave from, for 9 years. Nobody raised their hand out of 400 people. And so this is the world we live in. And this is why we have these discussions. This is why we have the podcast, is to educate and to, highlight those leaders within our communities.
And the reason I believe that is because we've become numb to when we go abroad and provoke change. And when I say provoke change, that's a nice way of saying we meddle in a lot of people's business that we shouldn't. So there's been wars, of course, in Laos. There's been wars in Yemen, in Syria, in Iran, in Afghanistan, and Iraq, that at times we are the perpetrators of this. But it's become so commonplace for us to do that it's not a shock when you say, did you know this? And did you know that? Did you know? It's not like a shock. We put a lot of our armed servicemen in danger constantly. And, I feel that we should not.
Well, and that segues to, it's not a shock, and which is it's disturbing that it's no longer a shock anymore. When I'm like, did you hear about the Black kid that got shot by a cop? And it's not even a shock anymore to people.
Well, people rationalize that. What I've had some debates.
Well, it's like, again, like that's all I hear. Oh, okay, like it's another story, but it shouldn't be like that.
No, but the heated debate is that people have gotten to the point where they feel that they have to rationalize why this happens because
and make up their own narrative.
Yeah, people automatically want to take a side. So if they hear that another shooting or things of that nature, the first thing I hear is, what did they do?
Right.
They shouldn't have ran from the police. They shouldn't have got involved in a struggle. And all of these things might be true to a certain extent. But struggling with the officer or not complying should not be a death sentence.
No, it shouldn't.
There are many different ways, especially if you are truly trained in the right way to handle that situation. After you call for backup, you got to think, I got about 5 minutes until backup arrives. So whatever I'm going to do, as long as I don't feel my life is in danger, then this is a situation that I can handle to a certain degree.
Right.
But
So with that said,
that kind of leads us
kind of segue to our guest speaker for tonight. If anybody, he would know more than any of us, at least, about security and armed and all that. So without further ado, we welcome Mark Garner for tonight's show as our special guest.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hello.
What's going on, Mark?
Nothing much, man. I was good sitting here just listening to y'all. I don't even want to talk. I was like, what else they got to say? This is good.
Hey, and for those who don't know, this man is a trained professional. I liken it to, do you ever watch those movies where somebody's taking over the White House, or they're taking over Air Force One, and the guys the special group of guys that they have go in to secure the situation? Okay, this is the real life version of that. As far as being trained and tactical, knowing, extensively about firearms and being able to teach people in the proper ways to use this. Man was in the military. He is a real life, military or hero to that degree. The Air Force One, we're going to send this guy in. So first of all, Mark, why don't you I'm sorry, go.
No, my just a correction real quick. I don't want people to be perturbed. One of my former partners is military.
That's right. You're right. Travis.
Yeah, right,
Travis.
right.
So why don't you tell people initially what you do?
All right. So I own Absolute Security Group based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We are an armed security protection team that protects musicians, celebrities, dignitaries, political figures when they come into Grand Rapids. Our duties can cover a very wide range, from simple vehicle escorts to close quarters protection. And what we do, security, what we do is it's like an onion. It's a layer, and we're that internal core. We do offer site security at several places, but what we really focus on is that core piece in person. We provide that person with executive protection and security.
Okay. Now you have Absolute Security Group, but you also have a secondary business.
Correct.
Is it Legion Tactical?
Correct. I also started Legion Tactical Firearms Training Academy a couple of years ago, just because I saw there was a missing piece for minorities and the information being shared to them about their rights when it comes to carrying and owning firearms. So I finished all my schooling for that, got licensed to teach those gun classes, and that's a passion. That's a real joy. I actually have a class coming up this Saturday with a group.
I want to learn.
I do too. Well, first
we'll be in one of your classes.
You have to get your foil first. You don't have your card yet. I got my card.
Right.
So
right.
I'm good.
That's right. You're in Illinois, so it's a little different, state to state, it difference. But that's so important you bring that up. People don't know their own laws in their own states, that before you can get a CPL or concealed carry license in Illinois, you have to have that card first.
Right. So tell us that now. This is such an interesting kind of industry to get into. I actually, one of my best friends, Marlon, he's become an avid gun owner, has purchased several guns, goes to the range all the time, and he actually was asking me about your tactical classes. So tell me, how do you get involved in this industry?
So, if I could be totally honest, my tactical training of all places really was elevated when I got involved with church security, believe it or not.
Wow.
I just ended up linking up with a lot of like-minded individuals like myself with self-defense. And I got hooked up with a company started by some Army Special Forces guys that I've worked with. I've done a lot of training and working with military groups, and they started this company, and I became a student. I was someone who already kind of knew the ins and outs of things, but it was an opportunity for me to sit back, be quiet, and just be a sponge and learn everything I could from these guys, combat vets who really were sharpened in their skill set. And that's truly like how I got involved. It was, man, late 2000s. And there was just a time where churches were being attacked constantly, and people were trying to figure out, how can we defend churches here? Do we get armed personnel? Do we train our own? And that's literally how it got started for me with the higher level of training.
Wow. Now, growing up, is this something that you were interested in, or is it later in life that you kind of got interested in protection and things of that security?
Right. I believe it's something that I've truly always had a passion for. I always thought as a kid that I would get into law enforcement. Okay. And so that's kind of where I was focused at for a lot of my younger years. I went to school, I went to college for criminal justice. But back then, when I was of age to potentially get in, was when law enforcement nationwide had a huge hiring boom in the early 2000s or late 90s, actually. So when I was coming of age and being ready in the early 2000s, there were no law enforcement jobs. And it's just funny, too, how, I spent so much time and effort. I even considered applying and working in law enforcement out of state. And all those doors would be shut and closed. And it was roadblock after roadblock until I decided to start this company and do my own thing. And that's when God really started opening doors. And that's what led me to realize this is where I'm supposed to be.
What's up?
Oh, wow.
That's what's up. That's kind of cool. Now, you say that, you started out in kind of church security and learning through that. And it was such a need for that type of security. But then you kind of morphed into, you've told me about some pretty high name people that you've provided security for in Grand Rapids, to the Reigns of the world. So is it different when you are protecting like a structure, like a church, as opposed to these celebrities who come in for 1 or 2 nights? And, there's a different level of security that you have to give one as opposed to the other?
Right. It definitely can be, because the mission focus is different. Okay. If you're guarding a church or, an entire entity building, there's so many more. In my line of work, there's so many entrances and exits and escape routes to configure and think of. Whereas when you're guarding just a celebrity of sorts, you still map out your routes and ways that you're going to take, but your primary is just one sole person here, right? And your team more than anything. That's my primary. I literally tell customers, like, I'm not here to protect you. I'm here to protect my brothers, and you just happen to be in our midst, you know. So it definitely is a different type or different way that you provide that service. When you're doing site security, it's more of a visual deterrent. Whereas definitely when you're doing executive protection and things of that nature, it can go hands-on very quick, and all the rules are totally different as well.
Sure. Now, dealing, we live in a world where the ability to own a gun is very prevalent. They've actually changed certain laws where in some states you don't need anything to walk in and basically purchase a firearm. Now, being a professional in that industry and an expert in firearms, what is your thought process on the laws that govern guns? Because I've heard pros and cons on both sides. That the more guns that law-abiding citizens have, the better suited that we'll be able to take care of ourselves as a community. And then I heard the more guns that you have out there is the more propensity for them to be used for violent activity. Right.
So, I'm the guy that is constantly caught in the middle when it comes to those type of topics. I'm a huge Second Amendment supporter. However, there's a local business here in West Michigan that has a slogan: "With rights come responsibilities." And I truly agree with that. I don't believe anyone should be able to just walk into a store unchecked, unnamed, unidentified, and just simply buy a firearm and then go off about their day. I think the most critical part to that in this day and age, and we're seeing it evident every day, is the mental health system in America is failing.
Yes.
And because of that, no, I have no problem. I own a lot of firearms, and I have no problem. Yeah, run my name, check. You know,
Sure.
I don't mind. You know,
Sure.
if you have nothing to hide, I don't think there's anything wrong with that system.
Mhm.
My issue though is that I don't want that to be infringed on either. If I'm willing to allow you to run my name,
Mhm.
check my background, you see that I'm not a criminal, I'm not a harmful element to society, then don't make it so hard for me to do what I enjoy doing either. You know, I'm already willing to jump through the hoops to do this and to do that. Okay, I passed that. Let it be. You know, I don't believe our nation will ever resolve the gun crime issue in America, because even if you ban and outlaw firearms, criminals aren't going to go, dang, we got to turn our guns in.
Right.
No.
Right.
So I don't think that's a solution to it at all either. So
Okay.
I'm always on the fence with it, if I could be totally honest with you. But
Sure.
I support everyone's right to legally own and keep firearms. But at the same time, I'm okay with the checks and balances as well that are in place to make sure that they're not in the wrong hands.
Right.
Sure. Sure. Now, I was surprised that when I got my FOIL card, now I didn't get my concealed carry. I just got my FOIL card to be able to own a firearm.
Right.
I was surprised that I didn't have to take, because remember I called you and asked you about, taking CPL classes. But I was surprised that I didn't need any classes to purchase my gun. I just needed to go through the necessary checks and balances as far as, my background was concerned. So do you believe that regardless of if it's carrying concealed or just having it in your home, should training be mandatory?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I honestly, I'm not set with just the minimum state requirements that are required for you to carry your CPL.
Okay.
You know, our kids are 17, 15, and 11, and they're my kids, so I get it, but they can walk in a gun class and pass that CPL course, no problem.
Right.
And too many people walk around with too much pride and ego,
Right.
and a lack of ability. And I mean, that's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Sure.
I believe everyone who carries a firearm needs an extreme, far greater level of training than what they're probably prepared for. You know, it's a lot different. And I can tell you from experience, it's a lot different shooting at a piece of paper at the gun range than when it's a bad guy 10 yards away shooting back and moving.
Right.
You know, you're not prepared for that, and now you have to take into account who all is around here.
Right.
You know, once you fire a bullet from a firearm, there's no calling it back.
Right.
You know, and that's what I teach my students. Where's it going to go? Is it going to go where you intended it to be? Is it going to go into the neighbor's house, into the neighbor? Are you prepared to engage in this conflict? You know, if not, you don't need a firearm.
Exactly.
And one other thing, I'll say this real quick. I teach my students about these things, and I tell them, you know, if you're a punk today without a gun, tomorrow you're just a punk with a gun. And if you're not prepared for this situation, just because you have a firearm, don't go walking into that, because you're not prepared for it. If you would pass by it yesterday, pass by it today.
Right. Right. Makes perfect sense. I agree totally that I don't necessarily not want people to have guns because you have to protect yourself. I have 4 kids, 2 daughters, a wife, a 3-year-old. Somebody coming here is my responsibility to handle that situation and make sure everyone is safe. But I do feel that you have to know what you're doing with the fire. I mean, you have to know what you're doing with just about anything. So you have to know what you're doing with the firearm as well. So I do agree with that. Last week we had a psychologist on that deals with mental health, and he actually has to run tests and screen police officers to see whether or not they're renewed and to see whether or not their mental capacity is what is needed to be a police officer. And full disclosure, you and your team were a part of, not just the sole members, but you were a part of security details that protected the NAACP when they were here, as well as Attorney Crump, as well as the family of the victim of the police shooting. So, I know because they were your clients, there's probably certain things that you can't go into. But what are your general thoughts on that situation?
It's funny you bring that up. The local Grand Rapids NAACP president literally just texted me while we were sitting here talking, because we have the funeral for Patrick Leoya coming up this Friday.
Yes.
And we'll be out there just offering some sort of peace of mind of sorts for that family and for those who will be in attendance.
Wow.
That entire situation has been, first and foremost, utterly tragic for not just our city, but our nation, and even deeper, our community, because here we are again, wanting answers.
Yeah.
Here we are again, wanting answers of why is there another dead brother at the hands of a police officer?
Right.
And no matter how you cut it, it's very tragic on both sides. My prayers go out to the family. It truly does. My prayers also go out to the officer. I don't think people realize that they're both going through something. So my prayers definitely go out to both of them. But working in such close capacity with a lot of the key players involved since that incident has happened, from my training and experience, I truly feel that it was something that could have been totally avoided by either party at any point in time.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't agree at all with getting out of your vehicle, resisting an officer, running from an officer, being non-compliant. I don't agree with that at all. However, as we talked about previously, I don't believe that should be a death sentence either. We have to have some sort of reform, some sort of better training, that these situations, they have to discontinue. We can't continue to every 6 months, every year, every other year, how often, we can't continue to have these incidents.
Well, I wanted to ask you, because you are trained in these type of situations, and I forgot who it was that made this video that said that from their professional experience, what it looked like, and this is not confirmed, this is just their opinion based on their experience, but it said it looked like he drew his weapon out, and the only example I can give is kind of like in a movie when somebody puts a gun in your back and says, don't move or stop struggling. You stop because you feel the gun in your back. Right. So it looked like he put the gun to him to say, stop struggling, freeze, had his hand on the trigger. And when the guy lifted up, the firearm went off.
It was the AD, what we call it, an accidental discharge. I thought the same thing.
Yeah. Now, in that scenario, I've heard, once again, various stories. I've heard that, yes, that is a way to handle the situation if you're trying to calm a situation down. The threat of being shot would do that. But I also heard that you don't pull your firearm out unless you intend to use it. And you definitely don't have your hand on the trigger unless you're intending to pull the trigger.
Right.
So in that thought process, once again, this is just a theory. There's no credible evidence of this. But when I heard that and I watched the video, it does seem like he was totally surprised when the gun kind of went off. And you see the struggle and him pull out the gun and try to put it towards his back. So what is your thought process on that?
Yeah, I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't know that officer personally, but I truly don't believe that his intent was to go out and murder a black man that day. I don't believe his intent, even in the middle of that struggle, was to kill Patrick. I truly don't. That's my personal opinion. Sure. Everyone has one.
Sure.
I believe exactly as you described when you saw the video. I saw the same thing. When he pulled his firearm out first, you know, movies and television will tell you that, oh, you can stand up and fight and grapple with this person for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not the truth. You know,
Right.
I tell you from experience, I'm gassed after about 45 seconds of wrestling.
Right.
You know, and if anything, that video shows you that officer was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And truth be told, Patrick probably was as well, but his adrenaline was what was pushing him. And
Sure.
but yeah, I believe wholeheartedly, exactly as you described. I believe the officer was tired. He didn't want to lose his taser per se. That's a whole nother topic that we can get into if you like. But I believe he did draw this firearm in an attempt to try to control the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we've all seen the video. You see when Patrick kind of lurches up, he tries to push him down, and the gun goes off.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is most sad about it is that I believe he knows in his heart of hearts he didn't mean to shoot him.
Right.
But for his own criminal defense, he'll never say, I accidentally did that, because it looks worse.
Right.
He has to say, I was in fear of my life, therefore I did. Because that's the only way it makes sense that this man's dead. Well, I was in fear of my life. He was going to get my taser, so I had to do this.
Mm-hmm.
When I believe wholeheartedly, anyone who watches the video sees that was an accident.
Right. Now, in that, and when we had the discussion about whether or not it was accidental or not, one person made the point that, and they even sent me the Michigan state rules for law enforcement officers, and one of the rules said that on a misdemeanor charge, you should never draw your weapon unless you feel that you are in imminent danger or someone around you is in imminent danger. Right. So the person, was basically saying, regardless if it was an accident or not, it might not be murder, but it certainly should be negligible homicide because you didn't perform your duties properly, which resulted in someone's death. But some people are saying when the taser came involved and it looks like he's trying to take the taser away, well, then it's not just a misdemeanor anymore. It becomes something more, which, they might use as a defense. What's your thought process about that? First, whether or not, the struggle with the taser changed the dynamic of the interaction. And then two, when you start struggling with someone, does that, kind of exacerbate the issue as opposed to more than just a misdemeanor? Because if we go just solely off of what he was pulled over for, then no, you're not supposed to draw your weapon on anything this minor. But then as things unfolded, did that situation change?
Right. So, there's so many variables to it. When I look at it and the training that I know of and have from law enforcement, to my knowledge, there's a policy in Grand Rapids right now, for example, if they run the plate on my car and it comes back, Mark Garner has a suspended license. If they turn the red and blues on and I take off down the street doing 80 miles an hour, they won't pursue, because I'm now creating more of a danger to society by driving 100 miles an hour down Franklin Street than me simply not having a license.
Sure.
Okay. So I look at it, as you said, it's a misdemeanor. It's a civil infraction that stopped originally, wrong plate, wrong car, whatever, what have you.
Yep.
And even once the resisting started, to me, that's resisting a peace officer.
Yep.
Where it turns into a felony is if he had become combative. And I think the video shows neither Patrick nor the officer were ever combative with one another.
Right.
He was resisting. He was trying to flee.
Yes.
He was trying to get away. But Patrick nor the officer ever punched, kicked, hit, spit, scratch one another. They never did that, either one of them.
Right.
So it was never combative where if I I don't see where the fear of one's life would have come into play.
Sure.
And like you said, the only time you pull your firearm is if there's an immediate threat of physical harm or death to you or another. That is literally the definition of deadly force. And that's the conversation that needs to take place here. Why was deadly force utilized when those things were not met yet?
Sure.
So yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense, definitely. So, a police officer has a few different means at their disposal to either de-escalate a situation or control a situation, I think would be a better term. So you have your billy club, you have your mace, you have your taser, and then ultimately you do have your firearm. Is there a procedure or process that you go through when you're dealing with someone like this, or is it just the police officer's judgment as far as what to use and when to use it?
Right. Well, you hear that quite a bit, officer discretion.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a cop out. Like, if I were involved in a situation like that, I can't be like, hey, homeowner discretion.
Right.
And it's legally the term is escalation of force, and there's plenty, as you said, there's chemical spray or chemical agents you can implement. There's batons, possibly, if the officer still carries a baton, a flashlight, a taser. But the thing about it too, though, and just being totally honest,
sure, we're open here.
How would our community have received it if that officer grabbed a flashlight and started beating on him with it?
Right.
He would have been wrong there too, according to our community. Had he hit him with a nightstick, there, in my honest opinion, there has to be an understanding here as well that there were things that were done that caused this situation to start and take place. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong.
Sure.
But to go from de-escalation to lethal force, like there's a lot of steps that have been skipped, and to jump to that final conclusion so quickly is irrelevant. It's unacceptable. Is what it is.
Now, as far and this was a question I had, because I said I've been at college parties where the police come to clear out the party, people don't leave, they spray some of their chemical agent in the air, everybody start moving out. So I haven't felt that firsthand that someone sprayed it on me, but I've been in the vicinity where I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
It ain't good.
Right. But then I some people have said, oh no, there's people who will stand up and you can hit them full face with that, and they'll have minor discomfort, but they'll keep coming. So how effective? Because that was my thing, is that if I got him on the ground and I'm on his back, I take out my mace and hit him in the face with that and tell him, look, I will empty this can out on you if you don't, and people are saying, no, you've seen too much of Hollywood. Somebody can still, do damage to you, even though you sprayed them in the face with the chemical agent. So what's your take on that?
So it is true, chemical agent is a great tool to have as part of your kit. However, there are certain individuals that may be able to walk through that. It may not affect them as much as it does someone else. It really doesn't. Plus, when you deploy chemical agents, anyone who sprays pepper spray also has to accept, I'm going to be pepper sprayed as well.
Okay.
But now here's my thing. Why can't we at least try?
Exactly. Right.
That was never an option that you went for, considered, thought about, especially with someone that, I'll say again, wasn't being combative. It is an option. Right. My thing is, try everything you can before you take a life.
Right.
Right.
If someone breaks into my house with all the training and firearms that I have in here, I'm going to say stop first.
Right.
I'm not going to hear the window bust and start sending rounds through the door.
Right.
So I'm going to use everything that I can before I jump to deadly force.
Right.
You know? And so, yeah. And, and it's easy to Monday morning quarterback situations. I totally get that. But you can't refute what we all saw and what was missing in it,
Right.
You really can't. And I think pepper spray would have, it's at least an option, it really is, So
there was a good point made that, when he was running away or jogging away or whatever the case may be, instead of tackling him, if you would use pepper spray, at the very least, it would have been hard for him to run away from the scene, because now you're dealing with even if it's not totally effective, you're disorientated now. You can't see as much as you would. You don't have, full vision. So it could have made that situation a lot different. And once again, you're right. We're being Monday morning quarterback. But the thing that I keep hearkening back to is that I'm a civilian. I have no formal training whatsoever. Outside of being in, barroom fights, I have no training whatsoever in this. At the same time, these gentlemen have training. And then the question comes in, do they have enough training? You being a professional in training people in these situations, do you feel the police have enough training, not only in the physical aspect of these situations, but in the mental and de-escalation portion of these type of situations?
Right. So I'll sum it up like this. I think obviously all departments could use more training, but more than anything, what you just hit on the head is they need more experience.
Right.
You can train me how to fight, but if I've never had someone punch me in the face, it's like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Right. Exactly.
And having that real life experience compared to being in a padded room on a mat with an instructor in a safe environment and you're being trained, that's different, man.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for people to, use that on the street. Now, I'll say this because in my circles, it's come up a lot about how the officer, before they saw the video, he should have had more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which specializes in ground fighting.
Right.
And I've done that stuff. And they're like, he should have been able to do this and that. Well, and there's truth to it. But I thought the officer honestly did a phenomenal job of trying to keep him down, being outweighed probably by 70, 80 pounds. I really did. I thought he did a good job. I think that's also why he was exhausted as well. However, you have to go into a situation like that with a mentality of, I'm going to win this fight.
Right.
You can't go into it limp wrist and not be prepared and ready to do whatever you got to do to win that fight. You have to dominate in those type of situations and environments, or you don't engage, that's another big one, in that matter, it's like, what, if I'm tired, I'm exhausted. If I have his ID, I have the car, I have his friend in the vehicle, I'm a disengage. Disengage, draw your firearm, stay on the ground. Because if he did that, I mean, truth be told, I think Patrick would have gotten up and ran away. He never tried to attack him. It was never combative.
Right.
And, everyone lives, but obviously that's not the outcome that we're in.
Right. And just briefly, when we were talking about tasers, what do you think of the officer who mistakenly put their gun instead of their taser? Because once again, we hear, on social media, we hear so many experts who have no idea what they're talking about. And but in this instance, people say that the weight, the feel is very different. The difference. You having used so many different techniques to guard people. What's your thought process on that?
It's an unfortunate accident that has happened. And I believe those officers should be held accountable for it because they had a lapse of judgment where they literally grabbed the wrong tool.
Right.
And what you see nowadays with law enforcement is you notice their tasers are bright yellow.
Yes.
And then they train them to keep their taser on their opposite gun side.
Mm.
So it's a mental thing that you have to be repetitive about in your training. I'm a lefty. If I move my left hand, I know I'm going toward my firearm.
Right. Right.
Moving your right hand, you're going towards your taser, you know? And it's typically what we would call a cross draw. So it would, you know, it's if you're a lefty, the taser would be on your right side. And people assume, well, that's so they can grab it with their right hand. No, they still will grab it with their dominant hand,
Right.
which is where I think the issue comes into play. Because you're still using your dominant gun hand to grab the less than lethal. And it's so easy in training to just go straight down and grab your firearm.
Right.
You know,
Right.
The unfortunate incident with the female deputy who grabbed her firearm and shot the individual in the back. I mean, I think it's clear as day that was an accident. The deputy yelled taser, taser, taser to let the other officers know to move.
Right.
Because in her mind, she had grabbed her taser, but it was actually her firearm. So
right.
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate situation.
Right. But still, you have to be held accountable for it. Someone lost their life because of your mistake. You don't just get a oopsie and get to go back to work. You took someone's life. That's a criminal act. You know, I look at everything from a civilian perspective. If you or I did that, they're going to throw the book at us. There's no different. You know, you don't get a blank check because of your title or occupation. You know, justice is justice, supposedly, for everybody, you know.
Sure. Now, all the session we had here should make people, number one, to be honest, have more training if they own a firearm. To be, like you said, you might not have the real world experience, but at least the repetitive nature of your training would at least help you in these situations. So I gotta say, you guys are right there in Grand Rapids. You guys train not only for CPL, but also tactical uses. So let's start with the CPL and the firearm training. If someone wanted to take your classes, how would they get in touch with you?
So our website for Legion Tactical is legiontactical.net. You can go there. There's not a questionnaire, but just a contact us section that will come directly to me. I am very, very particular on who I even train. You know, it's funny. I've been an instructor now for a few years, and I've trained thousands of people. And I say this humbly, every single person that I've trained, I know personally. I've never had a guest that I didn't know myself in any of my classes. And a lot of other instructors they're kind of blown away by that because they're like, man, your classes are always full. You always have a ton of students. But, you know, for me, it's not just the monetary gain. It's the information that is being provided. And just networking. So, you know, if you're someone I don't know, I'm not saying I wouldn't consider you and bring you in, but it would be a conversation that would take place first. And I would try to find out what's your level of knowledge and understanding with firearms. Are you a novice? Are you current, prior military, law enforcement, security, anything of that nature? I always just try to get a feel for who am I around? Who am I going to be dealing with? Who is going to have a loaded firearm at some point, you know, at a gun range with me? You know, there's a horrible story from 2013. Very famous American Navy SEAL Chris Kyle, the best American sniper in history. He went to the gun range with a buddy to train an individual who was an ex-Marine. And that Marine killed both of them at the gun range because he had mental health issues, you know? Wow. So I think about those things, man, when people approach me or fill out that information and want to take one of my classes. I do background checks on people. You don't have to, but I do, you know. Owning Absolute, I have a background program that I pay for to be able to search people. So I do that stuff. And I'll be honest, it's not often, but there's been a couple times where I've rejected people because I'm like, you know what, I think you're better fit for a different class is how I'll try to spin it. But I mean, if they really wanted to know, I'd have no problem telling them like, nah, dude, this ain't for you.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. So that's the kind of tactical portion of it where, you're training more in depth, how to move while firing, in those situations. As far as your security company, Absolute Security Group, kind of tell us what your ideal clients are. So if there's any personality or company or organization that needs security,
Right.
they would think of you guys.
Well, when it comes to security and protection at this stage of the game, I mean, we really run the gamut on it. We offer every level of security from, the personal protection executive detail with the black suit and the tie to that guy guarding the apartment complex in the front lobby that people see as they enter their building. I mean, we really provide it all. We, and I didn't mention that earlier, but I have an extensive career in armored trucking work. And I have one truck that I do armed courier work in Monday through Friday. So, I mean, we do it all. We really do. We really, really do. I would say what our niche is, though, is definitely executive protection. That is our bread and butter. That's what we started with. In my home office here, I have this picture hanging up here that is the original 10 people on my team when we first started. And and I always remember that of just remember where you came from, remember what you're good at, because it's something that has the ability to continue to evolve. I never would have thought that we would be guarding a family of an individual killed by law enforcement. Never thought that we'd be guarding an attorney or, a funeral,
Right.
So it's constantly evolving and you have to evolve with it. But, it's important to just know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and don't work outside those boundaries if you're not prepared for it. So, but we do it all. We really do. If it pertains to security, we do it. Even just document transportation, legal documents for law firms, process serving, things that we do it all.
You said when you said armored cars, I don't know why, but my mind immediately thought of The Town. It's a movie about armored car robberies in Boston and all of that. But, I don't know why that came to mind. But so we have Absolute Security Group. We have Legion Tactical. The reason why we had you on is not just because you were involved in the unfortunate situation, but we do this because we want to show people that someone in your community can start their own business and flourish and do that in many different industries. A lot of the questions that we have is there's a lot of people out there that have have an idea. They want to bring that idea to fruition. They want to start their own business, but they're scared. They're kind of on that ledge and they don't want to take that leap. To those people who are on the edge and want to take the leap but are scared, you took that plunge yourself. So what would you tell them?
Man, I would remind them that that's literally how this entire nation was built, by people with that mentality, people who were willing to take that leap and to try something different, to try something new. You don't know what you succeed at until you fail at something.
Sure.
And you can't fail at anything if you don't try. Is my mentality on it. So what's it going to harm you? Go for it. You can always build back up, my thing was, I was working for a corporation in the armored truck industry and had a good cushion salary desk job. But it was like, man, I'm supposed to be doing more. This isn't it.
Sure.
So, you got a family to provide for. You got this, you got that. Yeah, I do. But I don't want to be 70 going, man, I wish I would have, could have, should have. I want to try it,
Right.
So, anyone who's having those reservations, man, talk with your spouse, talk to your family, talk to the Lord about it, pray about it, man. And I'd say go for it, truly,
Awesome. Well, we'd just like to say, first of all, thank you for the work you're doing.
Absolutely.
It was scary when we heard that the family and people involved in the situation were getting death threats and things of that nature. But to know that there is a company out there, a person out there who is willing to put their lives in jeopardy to make sure that there's no more tragedy involved in the situation, you need to be commended. And I thank you for that.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I truly do. Thank you.
No doubt. Thank you very much for coming on, man. We'll love to have you back, in a few weeks or months, see how you guys are doing, promote your industry again. But thank you very much for coming on.
And we're signing up for the next class.
Well, see, he can't leave Illinois though, so we can't.
Right.
I don't
think
can,
it's all good. We'll get it figured out.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Take care, man. God bless you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I knew it would be a good conversation because I've known Mark for some time. Full disclosure, we did a lot of their initial marketing for Absolute Security. We also did the initial marketing for Legion Tactical. So we seen him when he was kind of not starting out, but in those beginning phases of getting his businesses together. Proud
of where he's going.
Without a doubt, we consider him a friend.
Yeah.
And also, I thought someone that was kind of in an inner loop of what was going on after the situation happened would be a good person to have on with his experience to get his view on, the perspective from the family, from the individual who tragically died, as well as the police officer as well. I'm in agreement that do I think that the officer had in his mind, I'm going to shoot this guy? No. But I do believe that oftentimes racial bias comes into these situations. And there's sometimes a fear automatically of the big black guy, you know what I'm saying, to be totally honest. And I do feel that he was losing that situation. So the gentleman would have been able to get away, and he didn't want that to happen. So he was going to use his gun as an equalizer. And then, quite frankly, because of his negligence, that gun went off and a life was lost. Now, I don't know where or what charge that comes under. Some people say involuntary manslaughter. Some people say negligent homicide. Some people say first-degree murder. Whatever it is, I believe that there should be consequences for those actions because I believe through direct incompetence, neglect, however you want to frame it, there's a life lost. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys got kind of some additional information from a professional as far as this was concerned. And then on top of that, regardless of how you feel, you got to pray for the family because the family is hurting because a loved one was lost, through a basic traffic stop. So no matter what your thought process is on this, pray for the family because they certainly need it. They deserve it in this type of situation, and be mindful. I always say when we end these podcasts, watch your six. And I mean that, you know what I'm saying? These are dangerous times. Like they said, mental health issues are at an all-time high. So you guys be careful out there.
Yes.
Anything you would like to say, sweetheart?
No. See you next week.
All right. Everybody, see you guys next week.
Same place.
Watch your six, for real. Peace out.
Lock on.